This is the Bigger Pockets Podcast, show 140.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the Bigger Pockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. Brandon Turner. What up, buddy?
Not much. How are you doing?
I am good. School is back in session.
In other words, your kids are out of your hair.
You know what? That makes me sad. That part makes me sad. It's nice to get back to a routine. There's something nice about just kind of getting back to it and really being able to focus. Of course, my routine was devastated this week because of jury duty.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go? Did you send a guy to jail?
I did not. I got to wait in the big room and wait for my name to be called, and it never was, which was kind of nice, so I could get back to work. But
nice.
It was the third time I've been called in like 5 years, 4 or 5 years, which is a little troubling to me. There's certainly enough people in our county to make it so I don't have to go that often, yet they keep calling me.
You know, I'm 30 years old. I have never been called for jury duty. Isn't that weird?
And I live in
Grays
Harbor. I
Harbor,
hope you
like
open the
felony.
mail next week and get some. Yeah, you would think Grays
you would
Harbor
think
is probably
it's like felony flats, we call it, because there's
aren't like 40% of your people in jail?
I think so.
So
It's amazing.
So that's a lot of court cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My wife's been called like 3 times. I've never been called.
Fascinating.
Maybe they don't have my address right, and maybe I don't know.
Oh, whoops.
I have no idea.
That might be an accident too, right?
I actually want to do it. I think it would be fun because I've never done it.
Yeah.
I'm a John Grisham guy. I love reading court, and I'm sure it's just like that, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. All right, man. Well, yeah. So today we've got a pretty cool show.
I love today's show.
Yeah, it was really, really great. Let's kind of get to it. But before we do, why don't we start with today's quick tip? All right, guys, quick tip. I know we say this probably on every other show or something. It's not I haven't really used it as a quick tip, but today's quick tip is get out there, find people, reach out to somebody. Basically, take 5 minutes today, 5 minutes tomorrow, 5 minutes the next day, and reach out to somebody that you have not yet met. Reach out to somebody in the business, in your area, somebody local, and strike up a new relationship. Just say hi to somebody. Jump on the Bigger Pockets site, go to biggerpockets.com/meet. And look for local folks and reach out. The more you do this, the more that you make this part of your business on a regular basis, the bigger your network's going to be, the more the opportunities are going to fall into your lap. So get out there and make that happen.
Wow, that was very motivational.
Thanks, man. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I was actually thinking after the interview we did with this guy today, we just got done recording it. I'm like, I could drive down to see him. I mean, he's only like 3 hours from my house. I was like, I want to drive down there and go and talk to him because I know that's the guy that's going to help me get my business to the next level. Because I want to be where he's at. So, yeah, awesome. Bill, I'm coming for you sometime soon.
Yes. All right, today, guys, we have Bill Sirius. Bill is the father of previous guests, Andrew and Philip. And Bill is focused on a really cool niche, which is student housing. But today's show, we certainly get into detail on student housing and we really, really dig in on it. And he's got so much to share. He's been doing this for a long time. But we talk about a whole lot of other things that would really be relevant to pretty much anybody in real estate. So this is a great show for everybody to tune into, listen up, listen carefully. This strategy that he's got, the niche that he focuses on is great. And the way he looks at the business is unbelievable. So tune in. This guy's a pro. He's been doing it a long time, since 1980, and learn a whole lot. So let's bring him on board. All right, Bill, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate being here, Josh and Brandon.
Thank you. This will be fun. This is our first ever, right? This is our first ever father-son, or having both the father and the sons on a Bigger Pockets
It's a
podcast.
dynasty.
Is that right? Well, I guess the sons were the first time you had brothers on, and now you have most of the family. I got a couple more sons, one in Portland, one here in town, but...
let's get them on.
Yeah, and we are talking about Andrew and Philip.
Andrew and Philip in Kansas City, Luke in Portland, Mark here in town with us. So I got 4 sons, and they're all more gifted than their old man.
Nice.
Which sadly isn't saying that much, but do what you can do.
Now, are there like 17 daughters to go along
We
with that?
wish. Yeah, my parents had 10 grandsons, and that's kind of what they're dealing with. So we're looking for a princess among the pack here in the granddaughter category.
We talked to Andrew and Philip. Andrew, a little. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Do what you can for us, all right?
All right. Well, so that was a great show. We really, really enjoyed having them, and I know they had mentioned you a bunch, and we decided it'd be great to bring you on. So let's just dig into this thing. You've been in the business for a long time, correct?
I have been, yeah. I had an interesting semi-false start in Portland, starting in 1980. Relocated down in Eugene. Yeah, that was at the crest of the market. That's like starting in 2007. Actually, it's kind of comparable. So nice. I rode the crest going down.
And I want to ask you really, really quick before you go on, just because I think it's important. Some stuff here is fairly timely. What were interest rates back in 1980?
Well, yeah, they were going between 12, 13%, maybe even 15 at the very height of the market. It was a dark era in real estate. Yeah. And darker yet was Oregon, because Oregon was based on the timber economy, much more so than it is now. And so when those kind of interest rates hit the country, it went into recession, but Oregon went into a virtual depression. And prices dropped like 35%. So people were just holding on for the ride down, kind of like what happened, not too many years ago. So we had seen that movie before, and it wasn't a pretty picture, I can tell you that. So that's when I started my real estate career. I actually bought 4 properties in Portland, and I was fortunate to get out of town without having too many losses. But kind of an experience that I started back up again in Eugene after I actually came down. I was a campus pastor for many years, and I relocated to Eugene because of the University of Oregon, focusing on working there. And then at one point, I came down in 86. In 89, I realized I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. What do I really want to do for the rest of my life? And I thought back, I really like that real estate thing. Didn't work out so well for me the first time around, but maybe I could try it again. So
I want to ask you a question on that, because I had an email from a guy a couple weeks ago, and I get him maybe once or twice a month, maybe, I don't know. People saying, I tried to invest in real estate once before, it didn't work out, and now I'm scared to get back in again. And so, as somebody who went through that, you went through it, it didn't work out so good. I mean, how did you get the guts to go back in, and what should people do?
I realized the advantages of real estate, the IDEAL that I think my sons talked about: income, depreciation, equity buildup, appreciation potential, leverage. I knew all that, so I knew it was a viable business. The question was, how could I make it viable? And it was a book that actually turned me around. It was a book on landlording, property management. And I realized through reading that book, I had treated real estate like a hobby instead of a business. I was doing really I had an informal relationship with my tenants. I was doing kind of, sometimes I didn't even do rental agreements. My construction skills were less than lousy. And I needed to hire people out to do certain things. So I made so many mistakes in starting out in Portland. And reading that book kind of said, you got to treat this, even if you only own one property, from day one, you treat it as a business. Yeah. So that meant getting business cards. It meant getting a business name. It meant meeting tenants not in my home, but my office. Now, my office in those days was Wendy's. And of course, they didn't realize I was out, from my regular brick and mortar office, just happened to be out that day, and I could meet them at a restaurant. But that was my office. That's where I'd meet tenants. So it wasn't so informal as to, hey, meet them at my house and bring them there. That wasn't a good thing. It wasn't business-minded. I was entrepreneurial in nature, but in college, I never took a single business class. And that's what I realized. I needed to treat real estate from the first property on as a full-blown business.
Yeah. I mean, that is so true. And that's something I didn't do at the very beginning either. The idea of a business versus a hobby. I just got into it because they said to buy real estate, right? Like, that's just the thing you do. And I didn't realize there was so much more. In fact, I don't know if we've talked about it yet on the show, but we've got a new a book on landlording coming out this fall, hopefully, here at Bigger Pockets. And my wife and I co-wrote it. And there's the second chapter of that book, the entire second chapter, which is like 10,000 words, is called The Business of landlording. And it's entirely on the difference between that, because I wanted to emphasize that so much, because I think if there's one mistake people make early on in their landlording, it's that problem of not treating it like the business that it is, and they just treat it like a hobby.
Well, it's unprofessional, right? And it's not. That's not to say somebody is a bad person, but they don't understand that they have to be professional in order to. Yeah, they have to have that professional mindset in order to run it professionally.
And I think you're straying into bad territory business-wise if you're treating your tenants as your friends. That doesn't mean they're customers, they're clients, they're your residents, they're your income base, but they're not your buddies, and you shouldn't treat them as such, and you shouldn't think of them in that way. Of course, be friendly, but they're not friends. They're just like any other business relationship you would have.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Hey, Bill. So you talked about the 4 properties in Portland, and you mentioned that you failed. So would you mind digging in a little bit on what exactly happened? How did you fail? Why did you fail?
Well, okay. So that's a really good question. I was fortunate that one of those properties turned out to be pretty good. But here's what you think. You think you failed. You didn't really fail, but then you really failed. Let me give you an example. So I bought a property near Mount Tabor, beautiful area in Portland, and I bought it for $60,000. I put some money into it, about $70,000 I had into it. I sold it for that amount, and the couple that bought it from me was named Michael and Julie. And this is interesting. I happened to meet them, my wife and I, just a couple of years ago. They sold it at the very bottom of the market in Oregon, and they sold it in 84, I think it was, for $66,000. They lost $4,000. Then they turned around and told me, "Would you like to know the rest of the story?" And I knew what was coming. I said, "I don't think so." We'll tell it to you anyway. The property recently sold for $950,000, $880,000 more than I sold it for. Okay. Wow. So it's like, you can fail, but sometimes if you just hold on, if you just work it out, a failure can turn into something profitable. In my case, sadly, somebody else made the profit from that particular house. So I think I pulled the trigger too quickly. I got scared. I sold property. I didn't know what I was doing with property management. I didn't know what I was doing with construction. I didn't really have a strategy. Was I buy and hold? Was I flipping? What was I doing? So I think I was just confused as to what my niche was. And since then, I've realized that truly you have to become an expert in a niche market. And there's niches all across the landscape. Even when it comes to real estate, what is the niche market that I'm going to become initially an expert in? I can expand from there, but what's the market? I wasn't a niche thinker. I was just kind of a broad thinker. I'll just do everything in every way, and that's why it didn't work out very well.
Bill, you talk about the niches, and I think that is so important because people get overwhelmed with this idea of real estate, right? There's so many things they can do, and there's hundreds of books and thousands of hours of podcasts and videos on YouTube and everything. And so what I like to explain to people is exactly what you said. Just pick a niche to get into and focus on that. And then combine that with a strategy, like idea of, you're going to get into one niche of a property. Like maybe I want single family houses, or I want just small multifamilies for now, or I want student housing. And then what are you going to do with that? What's the strategy? Are you going to flip it? Are you going to rent it? Are you going to be a landlord? And so, it really simplifies everything down. It's one thing we really press upon in the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing, which, if people haven't read that, biggerpockets.com/UBG, they can check that out for free anytime. It's an online book. So check it out. So anyway, niches. What did you get into? What was your niche that you got into?
Well, maybe one of the first things that kicked me off or teed me off to a niche idea was when I decided I was going to buy a certain vehicle. I had this I call it Battlestar Galactica, that my parents gave me, a Ford Granada, 1976. Sorry,
can you share to the 12-year-old who's my co-host here what Battlestar Galactica was?
I know what Battlestar Galactica. Well, there's a new version of Battlestar Galactica.
Just Google it. All right,
assuming you're talking about the old version.
This car looked like something out of that sci-fi show. All right. Anyway, I wanted to get rid of it and get something that was usable. So I said, what do I want? So I decided what I wanted was a Toyota pickup truck. And then what year did I want? I didn't want a new one, didn't want to pay that kind of money. I wanted something between 79 and 81 because that was a certain kind of model. So I got to know 79 to 81 Toyota pickup trucks probably better than anybody else in the country. That was my niche market. I wanted to know how much they were worth. So when I saw one pop up somewhere, I would know exactly how much its value was. This is pre-internet days. You're not searching and comparing a bunch of stuff. You have a limited market, right? I put an ad in the paper said, wanted a 1979 to 1981 Toyota pickup truck. I'll trade you a car I have. I found a guy in Corvallis who needed to cut down on his debt to buy a house, and he had a 1981 Toyota pickup truck. I knew instantly how much it was worth. And I also knew what my car was worth. I went down and traded him my 76 Granada for that Toyota pickup truck. And I was the master of that niche market, truly the master.
Nice.
Now, if you could just take that kind of mindset to real estate, a specific niche, we're going to talk about student housing, but can you get to know what houses are valued in a particular area so that when you show up, you know exactly what your upside is, you know what the problems are to work with, you know what obstacles you have, and you know what value you can come out with. That takes a real focus on a niche market.
That's great. That's amazing. I think that is absolutely pure gold for anybody who's listening. Just think about it for a second, let it kind of settle in, because I mean that's exactly what you want to do. So you took that, and you said went into student housing. Why student housing?
Well, as I mentioned, I had relocated from Portland to Eugene to work as a campus pastor. So I was very familiar with students. I like students. Not everybody does. I really enjoyed hanging around with students. I felt I was a student all the way up into my 40s. I still feel kind of like I'm a student, I guess. Don't look that way so much anymore. I love the lifestyle. I love to stay up late. I love everything about students. And so I was located close to campus. I just fell into the student market. Again, you'd think all this strategy was coming to fore. No, I just said, I think I'll buy something around the campus. And it was, as I got into it, I realized this was a very profitable niche potentially. And that's kind of where things started out for me.
No, people always say student housing is a terrible idea. I hear it all the time, right? It's a terrible idea because it's, the students are going to trash the house and they're going to party and they're going to drink and it's just going to be a disaster. Don't get into student housing. I've heard numerous people tell me that over my life. What do you say to that?
Well, here's what student housing gives you. It gives you very high rents, no vacancy, and no loss of rents. Okay, I can deal with a little beer pong, no problem. I can deal with some parties. I can deal with a heavy turnover, which that's probably one of the downsides of the student rental market is you have so many people relocating year after year. So you have up to 75, maybe 80% turnover. We can talk about that a little bit more about specific orientation of property management towards student rentals. But if you can overcome the obstacles, every business, every niche has an obstacle, of course. And maybe the student obstacle are some that people would shy away from. I would say the kinds of rents and the lack of vacancy issues make student housing very attractive for a real estate investor.
Nice. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And to add on, I was kind of being, facetious earlier or whatever you want to call that. Like the idea that people are always going to complain about what people do, right? When I said I wanted to be a landlord, everyone said I was crazy. When I said I wanted to flip houses, they said I was stupid.
Sure.
Like, no matter what you get into, like you just said, there are challenges in everything that you do. And you can listen to people and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm going to go back to watching my soap operas, or I can overcome those challenges.
Well, and I was talking to a guy just not long ago, and he was lamenting about how hard it was to get a profit in a certain area. And I said, business is kind of like going to war. You're not really fighting an enemy, but you're trying to extract profit. You're trying to keep down expenses, and you're in a battle every single day. And you should look at it as you're putting your suit and your armor on and you're going out there and you're doing what you can to conquer the expenses and to increase the income, kind of thing. You got to look at it as a contact sport, I would say.
Yeah. So we've got low vacancy. we've got high rents. We're probably, you said somewhere around 80%. So every year we're putting in a new student or set of students into these units. Let's talk about the turnover, because again, I think that's the one thing that people flip out about. You got beer pong, you got kids drinking and partying and not taking care of stuff. I mean, if you compare the damage that kids are doing to a unit versus, a rental to non-students, I mean, we're probably talking a considerably higher cost, right?
Well, why don't we start with property management? We can jump back into some of the advantages, but maybe property management is a good place to start because that's where you end up. So the first thing is turnover, and that is something you just got to gear up. You got to roller coaster your schedule just like a student schedule. And so there's going to be really high activity when you're leasing up, and there's going to be really a lull during, say, the winter months when things are just moving around, going a normal schedule kind of thing. So you have this roller coaster schedule, and if you have a number of student rentals, you almost wonder what your staff's going to do during the lull. And they're pulling out their hair during the busy periods, and you just have to deal with that. It's kind of a waning and waxing schedule. The turnover issues, for one thing, you want to get parent co-signers, which is what we get in every one of our student rentals. So this is another great advantage. We don't lose. I can't remember when the last time we lost $1 of rent, because you have 5 students living in a house, you have 5 co-signers. You have 5 security deposits. You have 5 last month's rent. Tell me what's not good about that situation. No parent wants their son or daughter to destroy their own credit. So they're going to make good on anything that happens. And that's a pretty good hammer to use as a property manager when necessary. And some students are great. Some students are a disaster. But, overall, we protect ourselves on the downside by parental co-signer agreements. There's some other issues that probably ought to be addressed. One is group leases. So you're not leasing individual bedrooms in a house. That might be different sometimes in apartments. You're leasing to the whole group, so everybody is jointly and severally responsible for that. And so one person gets out of line, the others can pull them in because their dime is on the line with everybody else's. So that's really a good thing to remember. You want me to cover a few more things in property management before we move on? Another thing is websites are incredibly important in the student world, because I don't know of a student who's not on the internet, just period. And so their entire life goes through the cloud and goes through the web. You want to be the presence that they're looking up. They want to look at the properties. They want to do a virtual tour before they step inside. So pictures are really important, and any website that's true. I'd say if your pictures aren't at the level of Airbnb, then you ought to redo your pictures. Check out Airbnb.com. Those pictures are attractive, and that's what your property should look like on the web.
That's awesome.
Because that's where students are going to look first, is at your photos.
And that applies to anybody, by the way. I mean, that's just not just students.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're selling a property, spend the money to take nice pictures, period.
Yeah, I hired a photographer just to come and take pictures at my apartment complex of my best unit, the one with the best tenants, with the best furniture.
Great idea.
She went through there, took a bunch of pictures, and we've been using them for 3 years now, the same pictures, and that's what we have on our website. And such easy. I mean, it was like $150 or something like that, and just, great tips. I love that, Bill.
Yep.
Yeah, and marketing is really important, and understanding the student schedule, particularly as you get a few rentals under your belt, because there's a lot of increasing competition out there. A lot of large apartment complexes have been built now next to universities, which has just increased the supply tremendously and sometimes over the demand. So marketing on Craigslist, marketing through for rent signs. We start, this might surprise you, but we start in January for the next September. So our school year starts the end of September. In January, a student gets a letter saying, do you want to re-rent this year or not? Wow. You need to tell us by February 1st. It used to be April 1st. Then it was March 1st. Now it's February 1st in Eugene because of the supply of rentals. So we're knocking on your door real early to say, would you like to release with us? If not, we're going February 1st to put this on our website and begin to marketing to another group of students who won't move in until the next September, likely.
Wow. Yeah.
Sounds rough. I mean, really, finding tenants has got to be difficult when you've got such an organization. I'm just kidding. That's awesome. That's great.
The thing about student rentals is you either do or you don't, particularly if a property can't really be rented to a family. Now, some can go either way, but some rentals are really only campus oriented. So you either have a group of students in there or you have an empty unit that year.
So what about summertime? I mean, do they sign a 12-month lease then, or is it sit vacant all summer?
That's somewhat a campus-to-campus issue. So when I started out at the University of Oregon. Go Ducks, by the way.
and he's rocking the Duck shirt. I see.
Well, not only that, I'm rocking the Duck, my $200 eBay Duck ring.
Nice.
Now I actually check this one out.
Ooh.
That's the Rose Bowl ring from our last, let's see, it was Florida State. Yes, it even says the score here on the side.
How does one get a Rose Bowl ring? Oh, because you're the campus minister? So you
No. One goes on
Did you steal
eBay and looks at one of these Chinese companies and spends $15 to get your own Rose Bowl ring. So, I'm going to be rocking. I'm sorry for your people who aren't watching YouTube right now, but I'm really rocking the Rose Bowl ring here.
That is some nice bling. I like that.
But anyway, so I started at University of Oregon. I also have a few rentals up in Oregon State. Now, those two campuses are interestingly different because Corvallis, Oregon State, is a very much smaller area, or population-wise, about 50,000. Where Oregon, University of Oregon, has Eugene surrounding it, which is about 250,000. So people in Eugene tend to stay during the summer, much more so than Corvallis. So I was a little reluctant, actually, at first to go to Corvallis because of the very factor you mentioned, Josh. What are you going to do in the summer? You're going to have a lot of vacancies in the summer. And I think you just have to kind of deal with that. As it turns out, Oregon State is booming, and they're growing 6% a year. Oregon's basically flat. And so actually there's no issue. People can get your leases no problem right now. But that's kind of a campus by campus thing. And somebody who's deciding that they want to, do some campus rental properties, they need to look at their specific campus and think of some criteria about why or why not this might make a good fit for starting campus rental.
Right on.
What about lawn care? Like, who takes care of that? Do you take care of that, or how's that work?
Yeah. So I've seen some landlords thinking, we'll figure the students will do that, or we'll supply a lawnmower. Well, that just won't cut it. It truly won't. Yeah, thank you very much. That is one amenity, quote unquote, that you need to give a student if you're going to enjoy what your property looks like. They're just not coming to school to cut grass. They're not going to do it. So have some kind of lawn care service that does that for you.
And do they have lawn care services that cut around kegs and chairs and beer cans?
You'd be surprised. And while they're there, they're going to pick up plastic cups, and they're going to pick up other things for you as well. Yes.
Nice.
And then they're going to possibly charge back the tenants for their extra time that it took them to clean up.
Possibly. It sounds like possibly a nice extra bit of money that you can make doing such things.
Yeah, that's true. You're really trying to just make... Oh, here's another, just a aside. Pets. Susie grew up with Barnaby, her wonderful dog, and, Phil grew up with Simon, his cat. What are you going to do about that? For many years, we had a no pet policy, which we totally switched directions on that. And part of it is because there's just so much more supply in our area. So we're very pet friendly. Now, on the other side of that, we're charging a security deposit, pet deposit for that. And also we're charging pet rent, which is $25 to $45 a month.
Nice.
And that's going to at least, it's going to even itself out in terms of pet damage, or maybe you'd even make a little money. But what it does do, it increases your potential for your residents, your tenant base. That's why we're very pet friendly at this point.
Right on. Let's talk about roommates. I'm assuming you've got all the parents co-signing, you got all that, but I'm guessing that you also end up dealing with some of this student drama where, so and so stopped paying and everybody wants to suck you into the whole mess. How do you typically deal with those situations?
Well, again, if you think of it in a mindset of a business, what are your policies about that? And essentially, your policies is we don't get sucked into the drama. At least we try not to, as much as possible. Once in a while, we have to step in because it's to our financial advantage to step in. But generally, it's you guys rent it as a group. You guys work it out as a group. We also have a house manager in our houses, not apartments, but say in a 5-bedroom house, and that person interacts with our office. So when somebody calls about a maintenance thing or goes online and lets us know about a maintenance thing or some other issue, we want to deal with a house manager, so we're not dealing with 5 different individuals and trying to call somebody back and not sure who we're supposed to deal with. So somebody usually rises to the surface and says, I'll take that responsibility on. I'll be the house manager.
Right on. Right on. Cool. Yeah, I love that. What about, do you have a policy? You've got a house and somebody wants to turn it into a fraternity house or sorority house. I mean, is that even feasible? Has that happened? Talk about.
Well, people do rent fraternities and sororities out, but here's how I see it. I've actually bought a fraternity house before, and I want to get into this because student rental value is all about the bedroom. And so this fraternity house, somebody had turned it into 11 apartments, but done a very inefficient job. There was probably 20 bedrooms there. And so what I did, I tore the entire thing apart, and I made 31 bedrooms out of what was 20 before. Now, that took a lot of money, but when you add up the cost of the funds versus the value of the increased rent, it was dramatically different. And that's what I've tried to do time and time again. I've made bedrooms out of in garages, over in carports. We've done it. I took a duplex one time that had a 1-bedroom on both sides. I took the best living room on one side, the best kitchen on the other, and it ended up being a 5-bedroom, 2-bath campus rental rather than you'd think normally you'd keep a duplex, but not in this situation. Again, it's a niche market, and the more bedrooms, the better, because every bedroom is worth $450, $550, $650. You don't really think of campus houses as houses per se. You think of them as small apartment complexes, and each bedroom is an apartment. You rent it as a group, but if you can add another apartment unit to your little apartment complex, wouldn't that be a financially advantageous thing to do?
Sounds
sure
good.
It would.
Sounds good. So what about permitting? I mean, is does that create challenges trying to get permits to be able to do that, or does the city kind of bend a little bit because they know that this is a student housing type situation?
Well, boy, every community is different. Some of them have been some neighborhoods have been kind of burned because students have moved into their neighborhood, and so they're pretty touchy about it. I think permitting is just like any kind of permitting. You just kind of go through the steps of the city. But I would say there is one thing you should be aware of, or a potential real estate student housing investor should be aware of, and that is city ordinances related to unrelated adults living together. So in some communities that are extremely restrictive and say you can't have over 3 unrelated adults living together, that is a killer for campus properties, because you can imagine you're restricting whatever size property you have to 3 adults living there. I would stay away from that market.
That's right.
Many restricted to 5 unrelated adults, and so that's kind of your top end. In our city, we even have something that is, fortunately, goes beyond that. We have something that allows 9 unrelated adults living together. It's called congregate living.
Is that per apartment?
It's per house. It's in a house. Yeah, in a house. You can have 5. We have a number of 9-bedroom houses. Wow. And again, they're like mini apartment buildings. And they have, let me give you an example. I had a property that was built in 1884. It's the oldest building of its kind that still exists in Eugene. It was a Abrams cider and fruit dryer. Folks went there and they pressed apples and made cider in 1884.
Wow.
Matter of fact, the name is still on the side of the building that says Abrams Cider and Fruit Dryer Factory.
That's cool.
The building has only been painted one time in its entire 131-year life.
Wow.
That's a testimony to lead-based paint, by the way. Anyway, I had made the bottom part of that into basically Class A office space at one point, and 3 different software companies had rented it. In the downturn of the market in the late 2000s, there was a lot of unrented office space in Eugene. So I decided to turn it into campus rentals since it was near the campus. And I was able to put a bunch of money into it, but ended up with 9 bedrooms and 3 baths, which generates a tremendous amount. I think they're probably rented for about $450 a bedroom, something like that. You can just add it together. That's a tremendous amount of rental income.
Wow. And that the fraternity house, I'm just curious. And I don't know if you're willing to share or if you even recall, but you would you mind sharing how much you paid for it, what you spent on renovation, and
yeah, well, this was the good old days. Yeah. We're talking mid '90s there, and it was a disaster. It was not just a fraternity house; it had a 48-unit quad complex behind it, and I paid about $900,000, I think. Wow. I put over time. I probably put at least that much money into it, at least that much, maybe more, and I was able to get actually a city loan initially for it that held me. As a matter of fact, I bought the property, and this is kind of my nature, but I bought the property and I said, wow, that was a good purchase, I think, but what am I going to do? Because this place is a disaster. And I was fortunate to, just kind of move one step at a time, find the money to fix it up and go from there.
So you rent, those are you're renting to the kids in the frat house at somewhere in that $450 to $750 per month.
Yeah, it's an apartment. It's an apartment building now. It's not really a frat house, but it was originally a frat house. Yes.
Okay. Oh, right. Cool.
Yeah. Now here's another situation. Sometimes you could take a commercial building. I took a dental office and created 4 units out of that. 2 4-bedrooms, 1 2-bedroom, and 1 1-bedroom. And you think of a dental office as having very small rooms, which it does. So that was the downside, these teeny bedrooms with no closets. But what you can do in a situation like that is buy a bunk bed apparatus that has a bunk on the top and a desk on the bottom. And all of a sudden you get a lot more floor space and a kind of a normal sized bedroom, even though you started out with these teeny rooms.
Yeah.
That's another.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very neat. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, before obviously we'll still talk a little about student rentals, but I want to know a little bit about your business as well and how you actually run the business now. So first of all, how big is your operation? How many units do you have, and kind of what are you doing overall?
Well, we've, going back to the niche concept, really the financial underpinnings of our company started with student rental properties. And that allowed us to expand into another niche. And interestingly enough, in 2005 and 2006, I ran a internship for 16 college students over 2 summers. And these college students were business majors from University of Oregon and Oregon State. My son, Andrew, was going to Oregon at the time and helped me pull that whole thing together. So for 3 months over 2 different summers, these students learned everything about our company, property management. They negotiated with sellers. We bought properties together. We fixed properties up. They just learned a ton because they wanted to learn how to become real estate investors. And so of those 16, 5 of those became partners of mine in 2007. Now, if you remember 2007, kind of the height of the market.
Yeah.
So it was just starting to tip over and go down. And what we ended up doing is, and I think you've talked to Andrew and Philip about this, we flipped nearly 200 houses in Portland, Salem, and Eugene with all these partners. And we were doing short sales and foreclosures, one after another after another. So that was the next niche we got into. We became experts at short sales and foreclosures. We became really, really good at it. And but it got very tiresome. As a matter of fact, I just got tired of the whole thing. That the flipping operation is very complex because you not only have to be good at buying, you have to be good at selling.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to the buy and hold model, which the company originated with. And so that's when we began to look around for someplace else. And we kind of fell into the Kansas City market. friend of mine had wanted me to go out and buy an apartment complex there together. I went out, looked at it, and I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And that ended up, I invited all my young partners to consider going to the Midwest with me. We looked at a number of different markets, and all of them said, no, we like the Northwest better. We think we'll stay here. The only one who relocated was my son, Andrew. And so in January of 2011, he went to Kansas City, and that's kind of it was like Normandy Beach, just starting from scratch and moving ahead. So now we've basically as many properties in Kansas City as we have in Eugene, which is quite a number. Another niche market that we got into was I had a partner who came back from Ecuador, who had lived there for 3 years and married an Ecuadorian woman. And he said, Bill, I'd like to get back into real estate. And we had one project in Eugene we'd done way back in the early 90s. And so we decided to focus on the Dallas market, and we bought multifamily properties down there. And he's become an expert. I don't know if I'm an expert in this niche market, but he's become quite the expert in multifamily in Dallas. So I've started at my age, somewhat my experience, I've started riding the wave of younger investors. As a matter of fact, I was just counting up the other day. I have one sole proprietorship. That's the Eugene rentals I own. But I have 7 active real estate partnerships with other people who are involved in distinct niches around the country. That's really a lot of fun. I'm kind of an opportunity junkie, really, is what it boils down to.
That's outstanding. It's so cool. And we chat about this a lot. Had you not partnered with those folks, you miss out on the opportunity. And so a piece, however small it is, of a bigger opportunity that somebody else is doing is better than no piece of anything. And I know Brandon loves talking about partnerships and using those to build your business, and I love to see that that's what you're doing as well. It's outstanding.
That was an insight I came. I was back in 2004, and I've been in the business about 15 years at this point. I went on vacation, and I was leading a class. I was teaching a class on Good to Great by Jim Collins, and to prep for it, I read Built to Last, and in Built to Last, he evaluates companies that are 50 years or older and just companies that have stood the test of time. And he says, to me, what he said was, you got to think about moving out of the mindset of this little business you got. I got campus rentals. I'm doing all right, into a different mindset. And this is the mindset. What does it take to build an enduringly great company? What a great phrase. And that turned my business mindset around, because I didn't have an enduringly great company at that point. But what would it take to move where I was at that point to moving in that direction? And you're exactly right, Josh. It would take partners who had a lot other gifts and energy and perspective and background than I had to make that kind of thing happen.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so how big is your operation today? I mean, how many people work for you? And I don't know, again, if you're willing to share, but how many properties do you have?
Well, we've got about 250 houses and apartment units. In Eugene, we have going on 230 houses in Kansas City and about 130 apartment units. By the way, we're just on the precipice of buying 97. That's why I can add nearly 100 more to what we have today.
97 units or houses?
97 houses in one purchase.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We'll have to come on sometime and maybe talk about that. Or maybe Andrew, who is your blogger, contributed blogger, could describe that.
That would be outstanding.
There's a lot of lessons, and we've learned a lot of lessons just in that purchase.
When do you close on that?
Within the month.
Wow.
Yeah, by the end of the month. As a matter of fact, I hope in the middle of the month. September. So
good luck.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. And then in in Dallas, we own I think 77 units in 2 different apartment complexes.
Wow, so little operation you got going there.
Yeah, it's pretty diverse. We probably have we have about 15. We probably have 30 folks who work for us, something like that, in the whole thing.
No kidding.
And I'll tell you, building if you want to build an enduringly great company, you've got to build a great team. And I feel like that through fits and starts, and truly that's what it is, because nobody is an expert at building a team. But I feel like we've come to that point where we have got a great team in Eugene. I mean, we've got people who do so well at property management, and they know the market. I'm not giving any direction. They kind of tell me what they're doing at this point, and it's just great. Kansas City, they're a little younger at building their team. They have about the same number as we do, but and through fits and starts, they've put together what I think is really a quality team as well. My partner in Dallas has got a good team too. So it's, becoming a team leader is kind of something new for people as they begin to become, as they pull on employees and contractors and others. But essentially, you need to become a good manager and figure out what that's about.
Is that, we've been going through the same thing. Today our team at Bigger Pockets is considerably bigger than it was 2 years ago, 1 year ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm experiencing the same thing. That's my job, is to learn how to be a good team leader and guide these amazing people who work for me and are passionate, and make sure they maintain that passion and keep them excited. And is that pretty much what you do today? Your job, your role in the company is just kind of that team leader and visionary.
Yeah, I think of one of the big changes for me has gone from kind of a sole proprietor mindset to this partnership team mindset, and that was a big transition fairly recently. And we're talking 3 years ago. I went from making pretty much the decisions of the company into having an executive team that includes Andrew, my son, Philip, my son, and then our operations manager out of Eugene is Amanda. And so I can't make decisions anymore just on my own, which is freeing and frustrating at the same time. But they truly are partners. They have a say. And the folks who work with them have a say in their areas of responsibility as well. They truly have a say. And giving over ownership, so to speak, of whatever it is that you own is a privilege and a responsibility to somebody. And you're thankful to see that they often rise to the occasion for that.
Yeah.
So
very, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, before we get out of here, we want to go over to the fire round section of the show, we have a lot more kind of student rental questions in there as well. So, or at least investing that'll involve that. So let's do that now. Here's the fire round.
It's time for the fire round.
All right, the fire round. These questions come direct out of the Bigger Pockets forum. So these are real questions that people are asking on Bigger Pockets. Number one, are there any special financing rules for student housing?
Well, any kind of real estate investment, in my mind, that's buy and hold really includes short-term financing and long-term financing. When I think of short-term, you got options here. Fortunately for me, the way I started was mom and dad financing. And that's between 0 and 6% interest. Okay, for me, oftentimes it was 0%. And that's the only way a poor campus pastor who had no credit to speak of, no real income, could get started, was my dad and mom. They loaned me money, and they kind of believed in me, and at mom and dad prices, which was awesome. Not only that, my dad signed mortgages for me because nobody would loan me any money. And it wasn't until a few years ago that he actually got off of all the mortgages he had signed for me. So if you have a mom and dad or uncle or whatever that could do that for you, is open to that because they trust you and you're making good decisions, then that's a good place to start. Then there's ma and pa money. These are people, associates, people that you meet, people that you network, that you can show, hey, I've got something here that makes sense financially. The numbers add up, and you show them the photos, you show them the numbers. Maybe you have a brag book by this time. We have a website that's kind of a brag book for us. People can go and get information about us. And I peg that at 9%. That's most of the money we borrow is at 9%. We're no points. We're not paying points on it. But that's not hard money. When you get to hard money, you're talking more like 11+% and points. So if you have to go there, and the numbers allow you to go there, then hard money is going to work for you. Finally, another short-term way to approach it is to get an equity partner. So you're splitting ownership, but they're bringing the money into it if you don't. You have to transition to that, though, to long-term financing if you're being buy and hold. And that's the challenge of buy and hold. How do you transition to long-term financing? You've done some kind of value add. And value add is critical when you're looking at a piece of property. How am I going to add value to this? Oftentimes, rehab is how people add value. But in the campus rental market, adding bedrooms is a value add. Changing the nature of a building can be a value add. So How do you do that? How do you kick into long-term financing? And again, I think that I could go through a number of different strategies if you want me to, but you've had a lot of that on Bigger Pockets. But you want to eventually lower your cost of funds, even from mom and pa 9% money to lower interest money, like in the 5% range.
So would I be correct in saying that kind of your strategy has largely been buy the properties with short-term money and then refinance it into longer-term money after a value add?
Absolutely. And our goal is to refinance all the money. This is not always achievable, but in Kansas City, we're really buying quite a lot right now. We want to buy something that when we're all said and done with it, and the property season, which local banks usually takes a year to season the property, you've rehabbed, rented, and seasoned the property. Then we bundle them together. So we're usually refinancing like 10 properties at a time. And we're trying to get all our money out, all our private lender money out, because we're usually buying 100% of the value of the property, not the value of the property, 100% of what it's costing us. The value of the property hopefully is at least 25% more of that, because we're buying really good deals. A lot of foreclosure properties and properties that are bank-owned properties, REO properties, et cetera. So we're trying to get a really good deal. And really, that's where real estate starts. It starts with a great deal. If you have a great deal, you can find the money. You can find the means. Find the great deal, and the money will follow.
Yeah,
that is our new quote card for this podcast. Yeah. That's awesome.
And that's awesome. I use a phrase a lot around here around BP called BRRRR, which is like, BRRRR. I'm cold. Like BRRRR is this idea of you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it out, and then you refinance it and you repeat. So it's the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And I went to a Bigger Pockets meetup up in just a group of Bigger Pockets members got together at the Ram Brewery up in Lakewood, Washington. Anyway, and there at the thing, like 5 different people there all said, yeah, I'm working on the BRRRR strategy right now. I'm working on this thing. Because if you do it right, it can be an awesome way to get a lot of properties without putting a lot of money into it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the L of ideal, right? IDEAL, leverage. You got to be careful with leverage because it can cut against you just like it can cut for you. But if you can, that's why an ordinary person can become very well off in real estate, because they're leveraging other people's money. And they're using a very little of their own money. And hopefully, if they value add right, they rehab right, they actually pull out all of their funds. Yeah, so that's the goal. That's the goal.
That actually kind of answers one of the other questions in the fire round was just, is no money down real estate actually a thing? Like, is that a possibility or is it just a scam? And you kind of answered that, right? You can technically do it.
Starts with a good deal. Starts with a great deal. Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got my fire round question, since our fire round is running a little bit less fiery. Usually it's quick question, quick answers.
Oh, okay.
No,
all right,
please. I love.
I would rather have the in-depth.
Yeah. So our last question for the fire round is, do you have any unique ways to find properties?
Well, the very best, and this goes back in history, the very best marketing thing I ever did was a 3-line ad. And it was targeted to a niche geographical area. I put it in the classifieds, which I don't even know if they exist anymore, but in the campus area of town. And the ad said, save the commission in bold at the top. I'm looking, let's see, it said, wanted a home or investment property in the campus area. Bill, and then my phone number. 3-line ad. The first property I bought from that could help me afford to do that ad for the end of time kind of thing. Nice. So, I mean, it's simple. It's maybe overlooked, but it's a niche thought. Just target this. I mean, I've had high school students go into areas of town that were circled the campus that were not right against the campus. And by the way, this is a strategy that I use quite a bit with campus rentals that I didn't talk about, was not buying. So you've got A, B, C, D, E, F. A is like, in walking distance of campus. B is like a half a mile biking distance. C is maybe a mile to 2 miles, say biking, driving distance. D is driving distance, and F would be in another area of town, which I've even tried and once in a while gotten away with renting to students in a whole different area of town. But those make a difference in terms of how much you can charge for rent, obviously, and how good your occupancy is going to be. But what I've tended to do is is not buying the A areas because they're so expensive, but look for the C and B areas that are a little farther away from campus, and to focus on those where you have homeowners who aren't thinking about campus rentals, but their house would make a perfect campus rental. It's a little farther away, but if you made it attractive to students by thinking with them in mind as you rehabbed it or whatever, that would make a great student rental. And so you've saved by not spending so much in the purchase price, but you still get the advantage of having higher rents than you would normally get.
Awesome.
Nice.
That's great.
I do have one more question I'm going to throw into the fire round here because it's my question. How are you attracting tenants then to those properties and not just normal people? I mean, do you write this is student housing or?
Good no. You can't write family friendly. You can't do anything like that. Those are all big no-nos. So when people see
Bill, really quickly, can you explain that for those people who are listening who don't understand? Why not just?
So, I mean, the discriminatory potential of putting any words like this, adult-friendly or family-friendly or student-only, or, I mean, that is just not going to fly. And
fair housing laws.
Fair housing laws is going to have somebody knocking on your door about you need to here apply to this, and it might not be a pleasant experience, as a matter of fact. So you need to be careful about that. And how we discriminate is the price of the rent. We'll rent to anybody who will pay this price, but only students are likely going to pay that kind of price for that single family residence. You're not going to get a family to do it. So it's self-selective. Okay. You know, it's relatively close to campus. It's got more bedrooms than most houses would have. It's got small living areas because what you've done, you've taken the dining room and made a bedroom out of it, right? You've taken the family room and split it into half and made a bedroom and a bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom out of it. So you've done everything you can to maximize the bedrooms and maybe added a bathroom while you're at it. And that's your thing. It's all about the bedroom. Well, most regular families, it's all about the bathroom, the living room, and the kitchen. For you, those are secondary issues. When a student looks at a house, they're not looking at the manicured lawn. They're not looking at the 2-car garage. They're not looking at the great school down the block. They're looking at, where am I going to live? What's the home within the home for me? And that's my bedroom and maybe secondarily my bathroom. You know, where's that going to be for my house? That's what they're thinking. And that's, as a student rental investor, that's how you got to think too.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah. All right, very, very cool. This is this whole episode has been.
That was a great show.
I've learned a ton of stuff, so this is great. I really want to know. Obviously, I say this every time, but I really want to look more into, because I'm like a mile away from my college, like our college here. I'm like about a mile, and we have a fair amount of students. Probably 10% or 20% of our people are students, and they're always our best tenants. Like, I love renting to students.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to make more of an emphasis on that now and try to. Especially, I'm kind of thinking these are.
You got to focus, man. Every damn episode, we learn something new. We talk to somebody new, and oh my god, I want to do this. Oh my god, I'm doing rental homes. Oh my god, I'm doing self-storage, dude.
I just got to
the riches, Brandon. The riches
and the niches.
I know.
Find a niche.
All I got to do is tell my wife, though. Hey, you should. Let's emphasize the student rental part, and then I don't have to do anything more. That's her business.
Along with the 18
Well, let me tell you about a couple of friends of mine who've done. A couple of friends of mine have done the same thing. A guy named Mark, we bought a couple of houses together and then we split off, but he is a contractor, a total craftsman, incredible finish carpenter. And what he did is he bought in the C- areas around, in terms of proximity to campus, kind of outside, but he cherried out his houses. When he markets, he doesn't put the address in. He just puts the pictures in. Then they call and he says, oh, meet me at such and such. They drive a little farther than they're used to, but when they get there and open the front door, they say, oh my gosh, I have got to live here. I don't care how far it is from campus. And so he's built up, I think he's got 7 houses right now that he's done that. Another friend of mine, Chris, he was an intern with us back in 2005. He saw what we were doing. He relocated back to his hometown in Poughkeepsie, New York, where Marist College is.
Yep.
And he said, I'm going to do the same thing. He's now got 7 or 8 campus houses. That's all he does in life, is he just attends to his houses, and he travels the world. So it's pretty cool what Chris has done. And you know, every situation is different. But again, you kind of got to get good at it. You got to have your niche, maybe even within the niche. So
yeah,
right on.
I love it.
Right on.
Yeah. I love it. All right, cool. Well, let's move over to the world famous
Famous for.
All right, these are the questions we ask every guest, and I know we asked your kids it, and so we're going to ask you it now. What is your favorite real estate book?
Well, I was thinking about this, guys, and if you give me a little room here for a departure, because I'm going to say something that probably everybody else has said on Bigger Pockets at one time or another. Let me talk just a little bit about how I think about reading, okay? Sure. And I'll mention some books if you're okay with this. I think about what's classic, what stands the test of time, what's an awesome book that I want to reread, maybe on a yearly basis. So I think of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think I'm going to read a book by Stephen Covey every year. The 8th Habit's a great book. First Things First is a great book. So every year I'm going to read a book by Stephen Covey. I don't care what it is. Then I think of, well, what are the classics in real estate? Every year I'm going to read The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. And you had on Jay
Papasan.
Yeah, Papasan. I think that's a modern classic as a real estate book. Every year I'm going to read it. So, what Francis Bacon said was that some books should be tasted, some devoured, and some, well, only a few, he said, should be chewed and digested thoroughly. And I'm taking his advice that I can read, like I love, who is it, Nissam's Taleb? Yeah, Taleb's books like The Black Swan, Tipping Point. What else has he written? Outliers. I love those books, but those books, you get the idea once and you kind of got it. It's probably not a book I would come back to every year. Great book, but not the classic kind of book I want to read year in and year out. A second criteria that orients me towards books is, are they researched or are they anecdotal? There's a lot of anecdotal this is what I did. It turned out great. You should do it too. And even now you've heard some of my own experiences, which is somewhat hard to translate. But what are the books that are genuinely researched? Jim Collins puts 20,000 hours into Built to Last, Good to Great, Great by Choice. Each book has had a graduate team of people behind that book researching that. So when he says, this is how it works, like he talks about, oh gosh, there's so many. I won't go through the principles. This is fact. This is anecdotal. This isn't my experience. This is fact. So I look for books that are research books, and I would put Jim Keller's or Gary Keller's book in that category too, because it's really a researched book, is what it is. And finally, what I would say is read books, the great books you want to read in a group setting, to get feedback on. Our executive team that I mentioned, Amanda, Andrew, and Philip and I, we read books together. One we read relatively recently is probably the greatest title of any book ever written, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, by Marshall Goldsmith. What a great book if you want to be hit in the face by the business version of the Sermon on the Mount. He goes to 20 personal character qualities that you're not doing very good. Andrew calls it Why You Screw Up So Badly, I think, something like that, or Why You're Screwing Up So Badly. But it's a very challenging book to talk about in a group context, because you know me, I know you, and here's some of the things I really want to work on. He's written a recent book, and I haven't read this yet, called Triggers, Creating Behavior That Lasts, Becoming the Person That You Want to Be. And that I can't wait to read that book and read it in a group context to get some feedback.
Right on. That's awesome. Well, you answered my next question, which is favorite business book. Why don't we jump to hobbies? What do you do for fun?
Well, being in Oregon, it's hard not to be outdoors. Hiking is something my wife and I like to do. Any kind of outdoor activity is fun to do. I'd say, and maybe to my downfall, I'm a little bit of an opportunity junkie, as I mentioned before. So I love business. And to me, business is kind of a hobby now, where once it was a hobby and I was making a mess of it. Now it's become a hobby in a different sort of way that I just enjoy it so much. I want to be around these folks that are partners of mine now and younger, visit with them, hang out with them, learn together, grow together. And that's kind of one of my hobbies as well, is just the opportunities that present themselves. Right. Just to give one, I can't stand this is such a great example. In Jim Collins' Built to Last, I think it's Built to Last, he gives the example of how Marriott hotels started. So Marriott in the 20s, it was John Willard Marriott started. He had the first A&W franchise. And instead of having this gigantic strategy about how he was going to build the Marriott hotel chain, he had A&W root beer stands. And as it turned out, the one next to the airport was doing better than all the rest of them. The reason he found out from the manager was because he was bringing in food to give to airline passengers, because there was no catering at that time on airlines flying across the country or across to Europe or whatever. And so that's where Marriott started, was providing catering on airlines. And then he realized that when the travelers got to their destination, there was no good hotels. So he said, well, why don't we start building hotels? Here was a guy who went where the opportunities afforded themselves. He just followed the opportunity. And I really feel like that's a great model. Follow the opportunity and then get really, really good at that niche.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, love it. Cool. All right, my final question of the day. Bill, what do you believe sets apart successful real estate investors from those who give up, they fail, or they never get started?
What sets real estate investors who succeed apart? So, well, I think, if anything, you have to have a mindset. And the mindset is somewhat that I am, and this may be a little strong, but I am kind of going to war. This is really a challenging thing. That is to extract value, to gain profit, to lower expenses. This is not something that there's a book that can just tell you how to do this. This is something that takes education, training, and then it takes action. And certainly it's action that separates people from wannabes to really doing it. It's taking action. And sometimes you're stepping into the unknown. As a matter of fact, a lot of times you're stepping into the unknown. You want to do it carefully. You want to do it with, some people, in a network helping you along. You want to have a backup, and et cetera. But you want to take action. If you don't just say, I'm going to make an offer on this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a lot of offers out here. If you don't start doing that, you're just not going to buy a property. And then, so what's the action I'm going to take? Execution. Where am I going to go today? What am I going to do to take the next step?
Right on.
I love it. Very cool.
That's great. All right, Bill, where can people find out more about you?
Well, you can go to our website, stewardshipproperties.com. We also have my partner and I have a website called Stewardship Capital. We buy notes, and that describes that business a little bit. Our company is called Stewardship Properties because it kind of reminds me that we're all just passing through this life, right? And while we're here, how do we think of ourselves not so much as owners, but as managers of what we've been entrusted? So it's a reminder for me every time I look at that name, but that's who we are, stewardshipproperties.com.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's odd for me to be on a podcast. I've got the college pastor, I've got the student the kid pastor, junior pastor, my co-host over here.
You are surrounded, Josh.
So I got to watch my mouth.
Oh my gosh. My gosh.
Hey, listen, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that was Bill Sirius here on the Bigger Pockets podcast, show 140. That's biggerpockets.com/show 140. And you can actually check out the show notes at biggerpockets.com/show 140. We didn't do this at the front of the show, so I wanted to just take an opportunity to remind you guys, please leave us ratings and reviews on SoundCloud and Stitcher and
iTunes,
YouTube, even if you're listening or checking this out on YouTube. But iTunes is exceptionally helpful. And today we've got a really cool review from I3, this podcast. I heart this podcast. I get it. You know what? I went to a Guru 7 seminar, didn't want to pay $30,000, found BP, never looked back from my real estate investing education. Listen to this show if you're serious about your REI. Love it. Love it. Yeah,
I'm just gonna make fun of you for a second. Don't 3.
You know what?
You're not hip on the teen language of the I less than 3
That's
heart.
probably a good thing, Brandon.
Well, you
I've
don't
got
you don't talk
a
like an 18-year-old girl or 16-year-old girl. Come on.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
well.
That's your job. That's why I pay you.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, obviously, go leave us a rating review and make sure you use the less than and the number 3 so Josh gets confused. With that, Josh, take us out.
Take us out. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Please be sure to check us out at biggerpockets.com. If you don't have an account, get on there, make one today. It's free, and there's a whole lot of people on there. We're almost at 350,000. We crossed 350,000. What am I thinking?
Are you
We hit
drunk?
350,000. I could be. 300 drunk on life. 350,000 members on Bigger Pockets. Jump in, join today, get to know some of those folks, and create your account. But with that, we'll see you next week on show 141 of the Bigger Pockets podcast. I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.